to an interesting discussion about reimagining education, and we have the pleasure of being able to invite to the stage Johannes Heinlein, who is the VP for Strategic Partnerships at edX. edX fits very well into the discussions that we've been having today, in the sense that you've heard from other MOOCs in the space, and we've heard from Coursera amongst others. And what's interesting as we move to edX is that they have obviously a very different model. They're a non-for-profit organization. And so I think this will be a lively and interesting view on what is happening in this space from edX's perspective. So Johannes, welcome to the stage.
Thank you for the introduction. I think we're going to have an intimate group, since I really want to be outside and get ice cream myself, so I think they should bring in the ice cream since we're late. But hopefully I'm going to quickly run through a few slides, and then if there are questions about what edX is doing, how we see the future of education being delivered, we can have a little bit of an engaging change. I was going to ask two questions up front, one in jest and one serious one. The first one, is there actually anyone here that's from England or from Wales? Oh, wow. What are you not doing upstairs? Shall I tell you the score? So for those of you who don't know, England is playing Wales at the European Championship right now. And I think Wales is leading 3-1 or something. Just kidding, just kidding. The second question is, does anybody here know that next week is the London Tech Week? Yeah, one person, two people, three people. So next week is the London Tech Week, and which is quite interesting because honestly, I had never heard of it before. And it's meant to engage people to come together, to learn about new technologies, to educate each other, and to really bring forward education and technology broadly. And to me, us, or many of us, not knowing about it is a reflection of what's wrong with education in many sense and in the technology field, and that is there's a lot of fragmentation going on. And it's very difficult to understand and to know what's going on at any one time. And I'll talk more about that now. So first up, why is edX been founded and what's different about edX? And this quote is really important to set some context. Knowledge for us is the most important currency of the 21st century. We think about not just higher education, but we think about knowledge per se and how knowledge is going to really foster innovation in societies, and it's gonna, our small ambition is to equalize to some extent the world and make it a better place. So what we did 4 years ago is Harvard and MIT, we founded together edX as a non-profit organization. At that point, Udacity was the first MOOC provider, then Coursera was started, and edX was the next one. We wanted to position ourselves quite differently from others that already existed, and so we made a very conscious choice to be a non-profit. So that was the first big differentiator. The second big differentiator is that we looked at providing a platform that was not bought, but open source, that is available to anyone, anywhere in the world for free. So after about a year of existence, we felt comfortable enough with the development of our platform, which was based on many existing and long-term existing technologies, that we released it at open source to the world. So anyone here could set up their own service using Open edX technology for free. What we did is that we made the Open edX software available not just for MOOCs. Often edX is known as a MOOC provider, but really what we provide is a service and a technology that allows the technology and the platform to be used in any instance. And it's being used in the classroom for blended learning, it's used for corporate education, and it's used as a MOOC provider platform as well. So what we've seen today, and you probably, I'm just realizing it's very much at the bottom of the slide, what you can't see is that Open edX, which is the open source platform, which is the same technology that we use for our portal, is being used by multiple nations as a national education platform. Korea, France, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Russia, Mexico. We've established agreements, these are just some examples, with those national ministries of higher education to use the Open edX open source technology platform to provide an access point for their higher education institutions, but really primarily for anyone. And that is something really important and very different because, as I said, we have an approach as a non-profit to not generate necessarily the highest possible income for us or venture capitalists, but really to allow societies to foster better educational outcomes, because we believe that's at the core of the mission. On the other hand, developing a technology platform is very expensive. I don't want to diminish the costs that are necessary to do so. So what we've done is we also work with a number of corporations where we've built a modified, customized platform for professional education training. And we provide professional education training on the edX platform as well. So the most widely used Open edX professional education platform is McKinsey Academy, where edX collaborates with McKinsey, builds the platform, runs it for them, and they provide this as a service to others. So that's the background to edX, and now I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes on talking about background on how the space, the education space, is changing in the next few years, and then give a little bit of an outlook into the future. And we can then agree to disagree, as the previous speakers have done. Two numbers, I think, that are really important. Over the next 2 decades, an estimated 1 billion women will enter the global workforce. Approximately 94% will be in emerging and developing economies. So why is that important? It's important because in order to deliver the best educational outcomes, they need to be provided with the appropriate skill-based training or access to higher education training. And often, unfortunately, particularly since in underdeveloped nations, there aren't the resources available. We heard earlier, I heard in one talk, the example of India, where India would need to build about 1,700 brick and mortar universities to satisfy the full need of higher education. And so there need to be other opportunities for people to engage with educational content, and online and technology is one important one. The second important point here is the fastest growing population in higher education is actually the working adult student. And why is that important? It's important because as you build a platform and as we engage with content providers, we are looking really at a lifelong learning process. When we talk about learning, we talk about learning from cradle to grave. I often tell the story, I have a 12-year-old son, he's taken edX courses that were for middle school students. Now, that's not our sweet spot, but it shows that it's possible. And on the other end of the spectrum, my father is 84 years old, he's also taking edX courses. So it's really cradle to grave, and that's what we're looking at. But the primary focus of education really right now with all of the MOOC platforms, and to that extent really for edX, sits between the 20 to about 40-year-old market. So this is the working adult rather than in the high school level. So since we founded edX, there are a number of really important emerging themes. And we have learned a lot over the last 4 years. And I listened earlier to Daphne Koller, and she was asked, what have you learned? Or I think, what did you expect? Something along the lines of, what happened that you didn't expect? My answer would have been everything. When we started out, we had a certain perception of what the future will hold. And pretty much everything has been different than we thought, which is a good thing. So I think change is a positive thing, and us engaging with our partners has been a really positive thing as well. So I'll just start on the left. When we started out, we really just looked at individual courses. Initially, the edX approach was to provide the equivalent of a university-based advanced school course. So the first course ever that we offered was 16 weeks long. It was a 16 weeks online course that more or less, using technology, replicated the content within MIT's course. Since then, we've certainly changed that approach, and we've moved very much towards not just individual courses, but rather programs. People are looking to learn skills and to be engaged not just in a singular short snippet, but in programs. The second one is the evolution of academic pathways, including alternative credentials. And I'll talk more about that later, what that means, because that is really right now the hottest topic of what's changing. Employers are accepting alternative credentials. What we're finding is that more and more employers are coming to edX and are saying, we actually want to license your courses. We want our employees to continue to engage with this content, but not in the sense of necessarily a full degree, but rather in a program or accepting this for continuing education unit credits or other credits that are available. Really, really important, and this is one of the other key differentiators for edX, is research and analytics should be at the core of what you do. I've heard this so many times, not just here today, but in other events as well. People say, oh, well, we just want to try something. But if we don't measure outcomes, if we don't understand what drives positive outcomes, well, then what are we designing? Simply counting eyeballs and clicks on your platform and say, oh, I'm educating people, we don't believe is the appropriate pathway. So what we are doing, we are engaging in research and providing analytical tools to our partners. We've actually, a number of our university partners have made all of the data that they've collected in an anonymized form public so that people can understand how do learners in a MOOC sense actually engage with content? What does it mean and how can we modify the content? So we believe research and analytics is critical. Last but not least, we do talk a lot about brand. What we've found is that those institutions, organizations, whether it's Microsoft, Amnesty International, or our close to 100 partner universities across the world, 20 of them in Europe, their brand is enhanced. So that's one of the powerful aspects for universities. Even though they are well known, they're often many hundred years old, they still seek to drive and generate a new audience, and working with a MOOC platform helps. So these are just some themes. So what does that mean for the technology? I call it platform themes here. Because if we understand that the world around us is changing in education, what does that mean for adaptation of technology platforms and changes in the edX platform? So the first one is, we want to have an improved discovery and an experience. For better or for worse, learners nowadays, and that's not limited to current university students or high school students or beyond, they seek an experience in learning. Videos are extremely important, the duration of the video is important, and the discovery is important. I'm sure all of us can recall many, many moments of when we pulled out the phone, tried to search for something, asked the phone, asked Siri or whatever to ask for something, and we just didn't get the right answer. So discovery, particularly in the educational context, is really critical. Credible credentials are important. So we think that there is a role for academic institutions, there is a role for governments in education. This should not simply be a pure private play. And therefore, we do believe that credible credentials that are accepted and that have some form of currency, so knowledge is the currency, but credentials are an important aspect of that currency, play an important role. So we want to ensure the integrity of the credentials and backed by credit with universities. We continue to improve the teaching and learning tools. So whether it's virtualizations, whether it's the effective tool to impact the learning experience, that's the next big important theme. We need to scale and extend the platform. Right now, edX has about 8 million, just over 8 million learners that are enrolled in edX courses. And we continue to double. So far, we've doubled every year. So that means you need to have scalability in the platform, obviously, because nothing is worse than going somewhere and seeing the spinning wheel or whatever you see. Last but not least, marketing business model and discovery opportunities are important because, one, you need to allow the content producers, which predominantly for us are universities, but also NGOs, some select corporates, and the learners. So both the content producers and the learners need to have the opportunity and the engagement and the discovery available. So this is what we do with our platform. How does that translate into, I mentioned, curricular pathways. So when we started out on the far left, what we had were courses, simply courses that were single instances. Then over time, we recognized that people were looking for some sort of certification, acknowledgement that they successfully completed the course. So we did that. We offered verified certificates. There was some verification. Then what we learned is that professional organizations, employers were looking for pathways to engage their employees. So we started some professional education courses that actually can sit behind a paywall or through functionalities that we've developed, like cohort functionality, offer modified content. We also license content. So there are many organizations, corporations that license content from us to offer in a different context or at a different time frame or with additional modified context and content to their learners. That then evolved into something that we called xSeries. So that's a series of courses leading to something. And then last year we started offering actual university credit. So the first experiment that we have was in the US with Arizona State University, which is really fascinating because it's admission agnostic. You can take the full first year, in the US it's called the freshman year, online without having to apply to the university, and you only have to pay for the credit if you successfully complete the course. So that's really revolutionary in that it stands the whole admissions process and inverts it, because there is no admissions process. Anybody can take the courses, and as long as you successfully pass the course, you can apply for credit and take the full first year of your bachelor degree online. And that's certainly going to evolve over time to, at some point, include a full bachelor degree. Last but not least, the newest program is something that we call the MicroMasters. The MicroMaster is a collection of courses that more or less makes up half of a full master's degree program. And then once you've completed this program, you have not automatic admissions into a master's program, but it leads to accelerated admissions into a master's program. The first one that's done that is MIT, and it certainly both reduces the time to a master's program, but it also gives you much greater flexibility, and it substantially reduces the cost. Now in Europe, cost of a master's degree compared to the US is still relatively minimal, but still there is a reduction in cost, which is positive. So what are some of the key themes for learning? Learning needs to be active, it needs to be social, it needs to be flexible, and we need to think about improved learning outcomes. Now go quickly. So 2 more slides. What are the key things that you should think about as you think about whether it's within your institution, within your organization, within government? What should you think about as you talk about the future of the educational landscape? The first and most important question is, of course, our strategic, economic, and policy considerations. You know, different governments handle higher education or primary education quite differently. But the question really needs to be is, why do learners learn? What kind of content do you provide them? What role do organizations play, whether it's universities or private organizations or primary school? And is there a match? Predominantly in the higher education space, most people go to university because they seek a better career at the end. Yes, there's a percentage of people who want to engage in research, but predominantly people want to gain better jobs. So think about, where do you see yourself as an organization 10 years from now? Is there a match between the learner and what you're doing? Learning pathway. What's the future of learning pathways? I already mentioned, we believe the curricular structure, the linear structure of curricula is going to go away, and it's becoming a really flexible framework. What's the student experience going to look like? Right now, very much we have a residential student experience, but if students are dispersed, do you need the same kind of spaces? Do you need the kind of libraries that you have right now? Do you need large lecture halls, or do you create maker spaces, smaller spaces? And last but not least, how does that impact you beyond the organization? What do collaborations look like? Who do you partner with? And how do you partner? So what does the future look like? There are a number of themes here, and I won't go into too much depth because of the time constraint, because we all want ice cream. You can tell I like ice cream. So unbundled time, content, and credentials. That is going to be one of the future themes in higher education. Not so much about linear pathways, but rather the unbundling of the time, the content, and the credentials. That leads to a global approach to learning. Don't think local, think global, while still allowing for some flexibility and localization in your content. We recognize that things are done differently and there should be different goals here in the UK than there should be perhaps in a nation in Africa than there should be in the US. Learning is lifelong. That continues to be the key theme. Don't think of it as a once-in-a-time life experience of learning. Think of lifelong experience. Learning will become more and more personalized. People are seeking snippets of learning experience that meet their current needs. And so you need to understand how you match your content production against this. How do you take people that want to be researchers to research, and how do you take others that just seek an improvement in their job to that? Last three themes: blended learning, on-campus learning continues to play a critical role. Accessible learning, so admission agnostic, for example, admissions. And last but not least, financial sustainability. How do you ensure that the finances of production in your organization, so content production and of the learner, are represented? So I'll stop with one final sentence. I don't believe there is a singular solution in the market today, nor will there be one in the future that will solve our educational problems or society's educational problem. But I do believe that there are opportunities for organizations, public-private partnerships, to collaborate, to work together, and to offer content in new modular pathways that will really change the future of education and allow positive learning outcomes, which is, again, a plus for the whole of society. Thank you very much.